Pete, I'm going to frame the conversation like this, right? If anybody other than Dan Hurley is coaching this UConn roster, right, the one that they've put together, where do you have them ranked? If it's not Dan Hurley and it's whoever, an average to above average basketball coach coaching a team with this roster, where do you have them ranked? Because I probably would have them somewhere around like the 15 to 20 range, I would think. Is that crazy, Tio?
No, I think that's about right. I think there's a lot of question marks, especially in the backcourt. Even the front court, Klingen's gone. They're not quite as big because that dude was a massive human. But I would probably put them in that 15 to 20 range. But just because it is Dan Hurley, there's going to be a learning curve with this unit because there's so many new pieces. Who does he rely on from day one? They're going to win a lot of games. Don't get me wrong, but there is going to be a little bit of a learning curve.
Well, who doesn't have a learning curve in college basketball? But Connecticut, we said last year they might have one, and guess what? That didn't happen. There was no curve. They just kept rolling. UConn has the best coach in the country. They have the best offensive system in the country. What their offense has turned into is absolutely outstanding. It's like watching poetry in motion. I don't have question at the guard slots, because Hassan Diarra and Aiden Mahaney are tough. I think Mahaney's going to be a nice fit for this team. But Diarra, Big East Sixth Man of the Year last year, it feels like all of the waves have led Hassan to get to this island where he is the man, where he is the point guard, where he is the tone setter. He's got that in him. Alex Caravan is a first-team All-American candidate. Liam McNeely is positioned to be one of the best freshmen in all of college basketball. My question does lie in the front court, and that's out of respect for how great Donovan Clingan and Samson Johnson, and before Johnson, Adama Sanogo and Donovan Clingan were the year previous. Now you're asking Samson Johnson, a solid big man, but somebody who's never had this type of role as the lead horse, and Terrace Reed, the transfer from Michigan, who has shown some good flashes, but now is going to be asked to do more and to come off the bench and do more. I'm curious to see what they look like at the center position.
Yeah, I think the center spot is the big question mark I have.
You're also asking Hassan Diarra, who is terrific, and I've spoke on this as much. I'm a big fan of his. He's a bulldog, and he plays so hard, and he is the Dan Hurley type of dude. He's replacing Tristan Newton, who is back-to-back Final Four most outstanding player. And Cam Spencer, who, as fun as he was to watch for a lot of people, that dude was one of the most unbelievably efficient players, I want to say, in the history of college basketball over the course of one season. He was that good. So like Mahaney is really good, and I've seen him in person. He's not built like Spencer. Spencer's wide and he's heavy. Mahaney's a little bit slimmer. There's going to be a difference in competition in the Big East and the type of play in the Big East compared to the West Coast Conference. He is talented enough to do it. I do think that it's going to take him a second to kind of adjust to the physicality of the Big East and how that league is played.
Yeah, so my hot take, and Fanny, we talked about this on the UConn offseason pod we did, is that when you're talking about roles offensively, I think we're going to see an Aiden Mahaney in the Tristan Newton role, where he's kind of like the guy at the end of a clock that you put the ball in his hands. We're going to see McNeely in something of the Cam Spencer role, where they run him off of pin downs and run him off of DHOs and kind of put him in positions to be able to make decisions, right, and make choices. And I think Hassan Diarra is going to be kind of the Steph Castle, Andre Jackson secondary facilitator. We're going to put him in the corner. They're not going to use him as like a lob threat, obviously. I think they're going to use him more as like playing him in the corner, force defenses to have to make a decision on if they're going to guard him or not. I don't know if it's going to work as effectively, and I do think that so much of buying into UConn as a potential national champion is like you are betting everything on the player development within that program, right? You're betting on Jalen Stewart taking a big step forward, Solo Ball taking a big step forward, Alex Caravan going from like a really good piece to the guy. You're betting on Hassan Diarra taking a step forward, Samson Johnson taking a step forward. So it's going to be interesting to see, but I'm excited about it. I think that it's closer, and I guess this gets into the second storyline for me. I think it's closer at the top of the conference with Creighton and Xavier specifically than a lot of people are giving it credit for. I would have Xavier as the third best team. maybe even the second best team in this league. And I think that Creighton, if they get Zugic, is right there as well. But we talked about it like on an episode. When was it? Last week, Fana? We talked about how
2 weeks
good
ago.
Kalkbrenner is. 2 weeks ago, how good Kalkbrenner is.
Yeah.
I just think that Creighton and Xavier have the horses to be able to make a run here, and you can't count out Marquette either.
Yeah, and let's talk about Xavier, because when you look at Xavier, part of the reason why we're saying this is because of the man at the helm. You're just not going to bet against Sean Miller having 2 down years in a row. But I think the thing with them is, when I was talking with their staff at the end of last season, they were so excited knowing they would have Davion McKnight, who can set the table for this team, back for another year. They obviously loved Quincy Oliveri, and he did a lot for them, and obviously he's not back. But I think for them then it was like, all right, what do we need to do to supplement in the backcourt? Well, what did they do? They got Ryan Conwell from Indiana State, close to 17 points per game last season, 6 rebounds, 3 assists per game. Guys, I think he could be an All Big East first-team caliber player if everything pans out. He could be that good. They
love him. They love him.
They absolutely love him. They also are very high on a sophomore named Dalen Swain, who they think has a chance to be special this year, has really grown as a player, and has had a really nice offseason. Dante Maddox, they bring in from Toledo, another guy who was – Sean Miller just likes getting buckets, a la Sule Boom, Quincy Oliveri. Well, Dante Maddox, 16 points per game, 3 assists per game, over 4 boards per game. They got these pieces around McKnight in Conwell and Maddox who should really help. I think the biggest thing with Xavier is when it's been so damn long since we have seen Zach Fremantle and Jerome Hunter functioning, what does it look like when they're back on the floor? And are they at the level that they used to be at? Because I can tell you guys right now, and John Hughley, who I know T.O. will talk about, was a really nice ad. If Fremantle gets to the level that he was at and stays healthy for the entire year, this team could be the second best team in the Big East. And hell, they could challenge UConn for the top spot, because I think the backcourt plays steady. I think Miller's so fired up to have a bounce back year. And I think that front court now is deeper, much deeper than it was last year.
Yeah, and you didn't even mention Marcus Foster, who's big on the wing, is going to be able to open up the floor, and he can really guard. But we've alluded to the backcourt and some of the pieces they've added. Trey Green comes back, who was good off the bench for him at times last year. Like, there's just a lot of really good pieces, and I'd rather have too much scoring and then figure it out, as opposed to just hoping that some guy is like, well, he's going to take a big step. These guys are proven scorers, so that helps things. Now, you might have to restrict some, because you got to be better across the board. You can't have everybody averaging 17 points. There's not enough basketballs, especially in the Big East. But it's good that they're bringing in all these pieces. I just feel, the front court's not getting enough love right now, because Fremantle comes back. I'm a fan of Hughley. He's been a tough sucker ever since he got into college. He plays with an edge. He's that kind of guy. Jerome Hunter is back from injury. Now, how they come back from injury is going to be huge. But with all with all the speed in the backcourt, you have big wings on the perimeter that can space the floor. This could turn out to be a really, really good team. I have them right there with Marquette and Creighton, but in that 2-3-4 area, just because I'm still curious on the eligibility concerns with Creighton. What happens there is going to change my mind drastically as far as how high or how low they're going to be. But this is a really good roster that they've put together. And Sean Miller, I mean, he came back with a vengeance. There's not a lot of guys, and you alluded to it, there's not a lot of guys that you can bank on having more than one bad season in a row. Sean qualifies. He's in that space. They're going to be really, really good and a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, the amount of perimeter talent that they have is just ridiculous, and obviously, picking them to compete with UConn is a bet on the health of Zach Fremantle, which is worrisome. Like, when was the last time we saw him have a completely healthy season? It's been like 3 years. So hopefully he stays that way. And then on a note outside of basketball, it's nice that we are talking about Jerome Hunter potentially having a chance to return to the sport, because what he dealt with was really